Yeah, you're operating. 3 blocks down the street.
William Gifford?
Yes. Citizen extraordinaire. Member of the budget
A
committee.
short list, yeah, member of the budget committee.
Rocky Smith, City Commission.
Eric Underwood, City of Oregon City, Economic Development.
David Wimmer, Finance Director.
David Frazier, City Manager.
Doug Neely, Mayor of Oregon City.
Betty Mustin, Oregon State Commission.
Did you want to do that table of staff?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Maureen Cole, Library Director.
Jim Leffler, Human Resources Director.
Scott Archer, Community Services Director.
Nancy Ide, City Recorder.
Tony Conkle, Community Development Director.
Nancy Kraushar, Public Works Director. Denise Chai, Assistant Parks and Recreation Director. Katie Riggs, Assistant to the City Manager.
Chris Wadsworth, Oregon City Police.
Sharon Cochran, Oregon City Police.
Mike Conrad, Oregon City Police.
Jim Bandito.
Joe Clark, Oregon City Police.
Louise.
We're very well protected.
Got your back.
Mr. Chair, I was going to suggest that if we need to do budget cuts, that be done by any department that wasn't here. I think they're all here.
That explains.
But
But they're all here.
We can figure out the ones that show the least number of people, so we better not touch the police.
Right.
I second the motion.
Sure.
They are armed.
Yeah, we are minus a couple of members, Mr. Frazier. Are we going to be okay quorum-wise?
Yes, we will.
Mr. Early, we're going to be
Chris
all
Story did call and tell us he had a conflict, so he wouldn't be here tonight.
Okay.
He's on the school board, so that might explain. They've got a little more challenging budget scenario than we do. So.
And then did we get any word on Mrs. Russo?
No, I haven't heard from her or from Ms. Setner.
You feel like we can proceed, though?
You ready for me?
We have enough to proceed?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You have 6. Yeah, I mean, you have 7, I need 6.
Okay, excellent. And then you've got roster and table of contents. Is there anything I need to do with that, or can we start with Mr. Warner?
We can start with Mr. Wood.
All right, excellent.
Okay, you guys have all been through this lots of times before, but your charge is to review the budget, listen to the budget message, let the public speak if they want to, and make any adjustments if you want, and then at the end of the process, you approve a budget in an amount, and you approve a tax rate and any tax levies, and then your job is done, and it goes on to the commission for the formal adoption in June.
And you also have to elect a chair and secretary.
Yes, I was looking at that. Am I the only citizen member here?
No.
William.
William. Because I believe it has to be one of the citizen members.
Yes.
Is that true?
No?
William's an excellent secretary.
Well, you would usually do that.
There you go.
All right.
Everybody
Well,
on
good for me then. All right, agenda item number 3 is election of chairperson.
Move for Chris Geiger.
Second.
Not sure that's the way it works. I'd like to open nominations, and I'll start with myself. I would like to nominate William Gifford as the chairperson for the Budget Committee.
Second.
This time I'd like to close nominations.
Wait a minute, excuse me, the chair actually is not allowed to make the nomination.
That's true.
Well, in any case, all those in favor?
Well, there's 2 motions.
One at a time.
Okay, we have a motion to elect William Gifford as chairperson. We had a second.
Wait a minute, we see 2 more people coming.
My motion is to get a second, so nothing's happened to it.
I seconded yours.
Well, we got to do
Yeah, you've got 2 nominations.
Oh, yeah.
One is for you and one is for William.
All right, well, all those in favor for Chris Geiger for budget chairman indicate by saying aye.
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 The ayes have it.
No, I don't know that. No, I guess I was 4 ayes.
Any opposed? Aye. So I'm not sure how many that was.
Why don't you raise your hand? Might be easier.
Sure.
Aye.
For Chris.
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4 for Chris.
Not another vote for
Okay.
this, 'cause I'm-
Did I count right? 4?
4.
Okay, and
All right.
for William Gifford?
I just
1, 2, 3.
Autumn, raise your hand.
No, then you've got a tie vote.
Okay. We have 3 for William Gifford, 4
All
for
right.
Chris.
Very good.
Good campaign, Chris.
Yeah, that was well run. All right, I'd like to open nominations for the position of secretary for the budget committee.
I nominate William for
I
secretary.
decline the nomination.
You decline?
I decline, I'll be anything but secretary.
So you don't, it's just a formal, you don't have to do anything.
Actually, we're not taking, she doesn't, whoever, he or she doesn't have to take minutes.
Doesn't have to take minutes?
So you would expedite the process if you were accepted.
Okay.
Are you withdrawing your nomination?
I'll put you to this.
I'll withdraw my objection.
Okay.
Thank you, William.
All right, nominations are closed. All those in favor for William Gifford for the position of secretary indicate by raising your hand. Any opposed? All right, well, that motion carries as well.
Who's secretary?
I would be chairman and William Gifford would be secretary.
The responsibility.
All right, very good.
Well, you, the two that came in late avoided getting nominated for either the chair or the secretary.
I gotta remember that next year.
You guys are just waiting out there.
Works for me.
All right, very good. Agenda item number 5, review of city commission goals, budget, addendum, and future forecast. Mr. Wimmer or Mr. Freed?
Good, oh, okay. Well, I guess, I didn't know I was doing all this, sorry.
So on page 29 of your budget book are the commission's goals.
Well, you guys, you have them out
We
here.
also have them published in this little booklet every year, and they're also on our website. Since you got your documents before the meeting, I'm assuming you're familiar with the goals. I know the commissioners are, so that's 5 of you. And just a word about these goals, that after these are adopted by the commission, actually even before they're adopted by the commission, when it looks like they're gonna be adopted by the commission after our January goal setting, we start about forming a budget to target these goals. So you'll see things in the budget that are specifically targeted at the goals set by the commission.
There really is no budget addendum at this point, and the future forecast, it's not either. We do have one little change when you get around to approving the budget. That's just a minor little $7,000 tweak. So that's,
It's all the streets page, this one.
yeah, I think giving everybody a couple more, I messed up and put something on the wrong line on page 142, and so this is the revised.
Thank you. Mr. Wimmer, I'm not sure that our mayor has one.
Second book.
Oh, you put it in
Well, I was
your.
Oh, you put it in my
Well,
book.
while he was over eating pizza. So I guess while we're on to approval of minutes, then.
42.
Should all gotten their minutes. I don't know if you print them off online or if everybody has them.
I move to approve minutes.
Second?
Okay, the motion to review and approve minutes from April 18th, 2011 has been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by raising your hands, please.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. All right, agenda item number 7. We are charged with receiving the budget message from the budget officer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I've got about 24 slides here tonight to go through, and then at the end of my presentation, we welcome any questions the committee has about any of the funds or departments or other budgeted items in the budget. So we're going to start by going over all the funds and the general fund. We're going to look at the public works fund, street, water, sewer, storm. Then we're going to look at some of the highlights in the budget, not all of them, but the major ones. The capital projects, this is one that some cities, we actually put people on a bus and take them around and show them the physical things that the decisions they made the prior year have resulted in, which is really kind of fun, but it's fairly time consuming, and the last couple of years it seems like just showing the graphics and some of the stuff we have to demonstrate with technology it seems to be sufficient for that. But if any of you want individual tours of any of the facilities or projects, let me know and we can arrange those in a secondary meeting. And then we'll have a summary, and then at the end we'll have questions from any of you that have them. So this is the all funds budget. As you can see, property taxes are up by about $400,000 for general fund. Most of that is due to the Measure 5 authorized increase. So it's not that taxes have gone up, it's simply the Measure 5 amount that is due the city. Also, we have intergovernmental revenues down by almost $13 million, and most of that is due to the fact that we've expended $12.4 million of the jug handle project. We still have
Do you have these graphs and hear it all? or this is all
The whole
different material?
PowerPoint presentation's on your table.
Yeah, you've got a hard copy on
Got
the
it,
table.
thank you very much.
And we'll also post this on the website for anyone who throws away the paper and wants to relive the evening. Our franchise, also wanted to mention that $240,000 of that intergovernmental revenues being down is we completed the Sportcraft Marina project this year. And so that was a grant that we had last year. So those are both large grants that are being expended essentially. So our beginning balances are up about $4.5 million with 6 funds. Being the major contributors are Library Reserve Fund at $955,000, Public Works Building Reserve at $1.4 million, Street Operations $640,000, Street SDCs $388,000, Fleet Replacement $471,000, and our Parks SDCs are up $292,000. So that makes up the main part of these beginning balances right here. That's the difference between the 22.5 and the 27. So now we're going to look, essentially we're going to go through this and look at revenues and expenditures of each of the categories that I mentioned in the first slide. So this is the expenditures from all funds. And here we see that our personnel services are up about $800,000. About half of that is a 2% COLA that we anticipate for negotiating with our labor unions, and our general employees will also receive the same COLA. We're also adding an assistant finance director, and I say adding, it's not really adding, it's just budgeting for it a second time. Last year we budgeted for it when we thought Mr. Wimmer was going to be with us longer. He went on a vacation to Mexico with his retired friends who convinced him he should retire sooner. So we didn't fill the position of assistant because it's my belief that the new director would benefit from filling the position with their own assistant. So we're going to re-budget for that position essentially one more time. Hopefully one more time will be it. We also are adding a code enforcement officer. That was a result of the commission's goal setting this year. And then materials and services are up about 10%. That's partly for the new Ermitinger House restoration account. There's $415,000 in that account post this budget. We created a new line item for Ermitinger because we kept dedicating funds every year. Last year we dedicated $100,000, for example, and each time we would dedicate funds, they would have to be carried over from year to year. So we looked at the project and thought, this thing could go on for 3 or 4 years before we get all the grant money in place and we're really finished. So we decided to go ahead and make it a line item. So you see that this year, all affecting the materials and services budget right there. So capital outlay is down about 21%. Most of that is due to the $12.8 million expended on the jug handle and the Sportcraft boat ramp that I mentioned already. Contingency is down about $3.2 million, and that's attributable to Public Works Building Reserve budget spending of $3.8 million more than in 2011 and 12. So essentially what Oregon City is doing is for facilities like Public Works and the library, we're in a good position because we're one of the few cities in Oregon that has enough in the general fund to be able to transfer money from different accounts to build things. So instead of going out to bond to build these facilities, and we will have to on the larger facilities, like for example the police facility, it's just too expensive that we wouldn't be able to save enough money before 2022 to actually build a new police station, so we're gonna have to go out with a bond on that. But these others, we're essentially, by moving the library into the Carnegie, for example, you're basically living there, and while you're there, you're saving what you would have spent on a nicer building to save for a nicer building. So it's a responsible way to budget. It does delay the fact that we don't have the facilities just yet, and we will probably, there's a good chance that we will go out to bond for some of these facilities, but when we do, by doing these transfers, at least we have money saved up, so we'll have a pretty substantial part of it already if we do have to go out. And I think that's a good thing to share with voters.
Were you speculating we might go out for a bond for Public Works?
It just kind of depends. It depends on the site and depends on how much it was going to cost, but we are dedicating money every year to this at a pretty substantial amount, so. So the next one is general fund expenditures by category. And this just kind of shows, this isn't a surprise to anybody, but personnel, we're largely a people-driven service organization. Our largest department is police. You will see that soon enough. But that's mostly a result, the small increase there is mostly the result of adding the assistant finance director and the 2% COLA that I mentioned already.
David,
Yes.
in your narrative, you indicate that amount is increased by 3% annually.
3% annually? Well, it was 3%.
Why does it increase?
It depends. He's talking about you're talking about the cost of living adjustment?
What page are
On page Roman numeral 2. Oh, perhaps that's only talking about the library building reserve fund? It's increased 3% annually? The sentence just jumped down at me.
Yeah, I don't think I would have, well, if I said 3%, that wasn't, I don't think that's in my budget message. But what page you want to
Roman numeral 2. The bottom of the middle paragraph, under general fund sustainability.
Yeah, that's the library.
So library goes up 3% a year.
Yes.
Well, we started out with $100 and some thousand bucks subsidy way back when, and we've been inflating it 3% every year.
And
But that's not the cost of living adjustment.
No, that's just sort of a,
I'm just wondering the strategy on that, like why aren't we doing it 5% a year or 2% a year?
well, we might not be need to do it all because,
Yeah.
because, I mean, things have changed a lot since we started doing that. And we have the library levy and it's getting lots and lots of money that they're putting aside. So, I mean, if general fund gets into straits sometime, that would probably be one thing that would go because.
Well, the
not
buying
really
power of
necessary.
those transfers is, I'm assuming that the 3% was originally established because that was the assumed inflation rate.
The gentleman on your left there. Years ago.
Yeah, I think at that time, we had 3% going on. We made the commitment that monies that were coming from our general fund at the time, we didn't have the district, but money was coming from both the county and from the city, and the city's proportion, we decided to commit to the library fund. And I presume at that time, we said 3% because that was probably about where we were.
Okay, this seems like a conveniently round number, so 2%.
Yeah, it's targeted at inflation, I'm almost certain, wasn't
Yeah,
that the thought?
I think so.
So the buying power of what we're transferring then would be adjusted with inflation, which,
And it probably also reflected we would get 3% increase in property tax revenues per year. Under the
Maximum.
so this year, the police department will receive about half as much in state shared revenue for 911 telephone service because Clackamas County Dispatch will now be receiving that. That was an action, I think, by the state, and they'll be transferring that money directly to them. And that 74,000 less is exacerbated a little bit because we will also have a $3,000 net loss to the city. So it's about 77,000 compared to last year. I'm a little bit concerned about that because that could actually put pressure on us to raise our tax levy by 3 to 5% next year to cover that. That's just a change that we really couldn't avoid. It was a state law change, and so there was nothing we could do to prevent it.
Doesn't the fire district annex pledge end this year, next year?
The end of this year. So,
The end of this fiscal year.
2012-13, this budget you're looking at.
yes. So here's the revenue, or, the revenue by department. And the slide looks a little lopsided, but really what I need to explain here is that non-departmental is, well, you see administration, court, police, community services. Not, the non-departmental is anything that's Blue Heron, the Ermitinger. There's an $86,000 subsidy to our engineering group because they're still not,
This is revenue.
on their own.
So that's-
side. There we are. That's right here. And you can see the slight increase here in policing. They're pretty much the same in these other categories as well because of the total. We'll talk a little, the street fund, this is the page that had a mistake on it. And I think you've all got the newest version. And essentially what this does is our intergovernmental revenues and our pavement management utility fee, which is charges for services, is increasing. The rate increase is $2.22 per household, so that would be about $26.64 a year for single family. And the intergovernmental revenues decreasing were again due to the jug handle. So you can see in there.
Is this the last year for the pavement increase of 2?
That's it there.
Well, for the
1.9
big
was
ones,
last
it
year.
goes down next year.
Yeah.
It goes to about 7% or something.
For those of you, I guess everybody here was here, except for maybe Carol.
Well, what's her name now?
You can see the name. Yes, Carol. The PMUP, I think, started off, they ramped it up really gradually so that it wouldn't hit all at once. And so this
Yeah.
is the last 25% increase, which is still $2.22 a month.
I think that's got a lot of public support, though.
It
Well,
does?
you're going to see later in the
Are seeing a
slideshow
big
here,
return on their investment on that.
and you're going to see some of the proof if you haven't driven on it. You'll see pictures of it here at the end that reinforce that. So again, here we see the effects of the capital outlay from the jug handle. We're adding a .85 part-time full-time equivalent employee, and then we're transferring $150,000 to building reserve. But those are really the only changes in the street fund expenditures.
You're adding a 1 point,
Yeah, .85 people in the part-time for public works.
for public works.
Those are our seasonal
For the
workers.
street.
What was our percentage of the total cost of the jug handle? I don't remember off the top of your
The city portion?
head.
Ooh, gosh, I would want to get back to you on that, but I think we've used about $1.8 million from Clackamas County traffic impact charges. And when they moved up to red soils, they paid money for a bunch of improvements throughout the city. So compared to the 22 million, and then we also have other federal funding, about $2.5 million in other federal funding too, so our portion was very small.
5%, 10% of the total impact?
So 1.5 out of 26,
It wouldn't have been
25?
Not even 10?
Yeah, right, I mean, 10 would be $2 million or more.
So here we see the charges for services on the water funds. This 5.5 million is the current rates that we collected this year. And there's the rate increase that's already been scheduled and approved by the city commission. So that is reflected here in this budget. And that's really the only significant change.
Does that take into account the loss from Blue Heron? Sure does.
Yes, yes, it does.
Which was significant, wasn't it?
Yeah, there's some good news about that too. When we get into franchise fees, or when we get into the amount of franchise we collect, I'll share with you, the way we calculate our Blue Heron franchise has changed, and so that helped us quite a bit.
And there's a double whammy on the charge for services, right? I mean, we expect increased rates and increased uses. Right.
I don't know if we predicted an increase in use or not.
Yeah, until it starts getting warmer.
I mean, as the population of the city
You can
grows.
see on South Fork and Racine, the water revenues have
The South-
gone
the
down
South
the
Fork
last
is-
3 years or so.
South Fork has been fairly flat
Yeah, so actually it's been down.
Insofar as usage,
Well, yeah, because we
Last
had
couple
warm
of
weather,
years.
it's been getting colder and wetter.
Yeah.
And that's why I asked, because I would imagine the mill is a huge consumer of water that we're no longer selling.
well, they weren't paying for a lot of it.
They didn't pay for the last $45,000 in water, so
Yeah.
we'll have a claim at the bankruptcy court, but we're an unsecured creditor, so the chances of collecting that are about as good as the chances of Dave.
Getting the water back.
But we're still trying, I mean, we have our name in the hat, for what it's worth. I do want to say something though about the water fund, because at the last council meeting, commission meeting, and our commissioners talked about this each of the last 2 years in the retreat, is the water rate rollback. I just want the committee members, especially those of you who are not commissioners, to realize how big of an effort that's going to be for us to inform people and get that dealt with. It's a little bit of a legal quagmire. There were some citizens who had some creative ideas on how the court might interpret that. At the last commission meeting, we talked to the city attorney since then, and he's reminded us that person isn't an attorney and that they're wrong. We want them to be right, but it does look like we're going to have a voter-approved solution probably. And that means getting out there, and we'll put all the research together, provide the talking points and several presentations, but then once the commission votes for that to go before the voters, the staff will have to pull back, and it'll be up to people in the community, Friends of Oregon City Water, you name it. Some groups, user groups, different civic organizations to get out there and get the message out about what that means, because you can't roll your water rates back to 1994 and stay solvent. So,
And I think there was some mention in here about the election being in May of 2012.
the commission hasn't established that time yet, but we're going to try to get at least a couple of elections in there in case the first one isn't successful. And you never know, but if we're not successful the first time around, we'll have to try again. So this is the water fund's expenditure budget. You can see that capital outlay is smaller this year. And I guess really it's not smaller, there are more smaller projects, that's what I meant to say. There was water line replacements, pipeline replacements. We're an older city, so we have a lot of infrastructure needs for pipelines, because the ones we have, some of them are really old. We're doing some rate studies, and we're contemplating other changes, particularly in some of our sewer lines, where we have a frequency of backups that's higher than most other cities. But that's the major changes there in the water fund.
Before you go on from water fund, sir?
Questions at the end are going to be now, that's okay.
While it's fresh.
Okay, that's fine.
On Roman numeral 4, at the end of the utility funds discussion, it talks about SDC credits, $200,000 SDC credits. And I was curious how people get credits on their SDCs.
Well, if they put in infrastructure that we would have normally paid for.
So that's sort of in compensation for?
Yeah, either we pay it or they pay it and we get the credit. Basically the way it works.
Oh, okay.
Right, boss?
It's not real money.
Well, in fact, it's real money.
It's
It's money we don't collect from them
It's
because
cost
they already
deferment.
spent it.
Well, it's like, you go build my driveway and I give you a credit and you can go use it somewhere else, or I could pay for building my driveway.
Okay, just want to know how this works. Thank you.
So again, the sewer funds, the charges for services here are increasing slightly. You see from 5.6 to 5.8, and that's a result of the $1.70 a month per household for a single family, or $20.40 a year increase in the sewer funds. That's the sewer rate.
SDCs are also estimated to go up another 100,000.
These are sewer fund expenditures. The real significant one here that I want to tell you about is the transfer of $300,000 to the building reserve. We transferred $400,000 last year. This is the Public Works Building Reserve, Dave. And that's reflected right here. Questions on that? So the storm drain funds, This one also has a scheduled rate increase of 3%, which turns out to be 25 cents a month for a single family. Not a big increase, but it's one that historically, I think, in most cities at least, has been way behind, and so it's good to be able to have some funds available for our storm drainage services. And this is how we're proposing to spend it.
So the storm drain fund and the storm drain SDC fund are different.
Those are lumped in this, these are the, we say these funds, they usually include the SDC fund also, like this, the 521 and 522 up there, the 521 is an operating fund and 22 is the SDC fund.
They just coincidentally be almost the same amount.
You don't know what
The
they're,
beginning balance,
that's the fund number.
the beginning fund balance
But you
is
can't tell from
272
there.
and the other
That's
is
the,
270.
that's the two funds lumped together, so
I was
you have to go
thinking-
back in the budget to see what the pieces make up. Some of those previous funds had three funds in them. And they had rate stabilization, the SEC, and the operating fund. That was the case for sewer and water. And storm drain had, or street had three funds, had operations, PMUF, and SDCs.
And here are some of the highlights. Again, our property taxes are increasing 3.4% over last year. That's the Measure 5 amount. We have kept our prior annexation pledge. And the other thing to point out is the Blue Heron expenditures. That looks like a larger number than the commission's minimum 100,000, and that's because it's last year's that we haven't expended, which is still in there, plus 125 million. So, and our agreement to be part of the partnership is a minimum. I said 100,000, but it's actually a minimum of 100. No one has put in more than the minimum so far, and no one's actually written any checks to Metro at this point, because we're doing due diligence on that. And for anybody that wants to know, there are four due diligence areas of liability down there, environmental and demolition being the two big ones. There's also some historic inventory that creates some potential liability for redevelopment. And those are being studied right now by Metro. We're in anticipation of trying to make an offer, or being ready to make an offer on the property by December. The good thing about that to me is that regardless of whether Metro ultimately purchases, and the partners, the state, the county, and the city, and Metro end up holding the property for a while for redevelopment, even if we don't do it, that information and that due diligence is going to have to be done by somebody. So the fact that we're doing it and preparing the site for reinvestment is a good thing in my mind, even if the private sector steps in sooner rather than later. It's still worthwhile to have that out of the way, and hopefully at the end we would have a kind of a clean slate to offer up for redevelopment, even if we're not involved in the actual purchase of the
What was the
property.
fourth one?
Stormwater. Currently, the county, as you know, just bought that piece with 60 acres across the river, and that's also Blue Heron, and it's all one holding. They're separate tracks, but there's actually a stormwater pipe under the river that connects and sheets off a lot of the water from the Oregon City side of Blue Heron over to the settling ponds on the Westland side. And so there's some liability there because we're not sure that pipe will stay in place and stay in operation. I suspect that Wes may have some other ideas about what they want to do with stormwater from our side of the river. And so that's one of the liabilities that has to be studied, because that could be a fairly expensive solution on what to do there. So these are just some budget highlights, some more things that, as you know, we've been subsidizing community development. I hate to use that word subsidy because we're all in this together, but essentially when I got here I think it was almost $800,000 a year that we were spending to keep that going. There has been a layoff there and then a reduction. We had a budgeted position last year that we didn't fill because it didn't look like revenues were going to be strong enough to warrant filling a position, so we didn't do that. And down below, it talks a little bit about the prior annexation pledge and the fact that the commission has maintained its commitment to keep that promise. And I think that's important, and that'll probably sit well with voters when it comes time to ask them for permission to do other things. Any questions about these? I want to say, I know we're on to library, and I pushed the button too soon, because I want to say just a little bit about building activity. The Sequoia project out on Glen Oak Road has been, I guess in a way, skewing our building results a little bit. In my first fiscal year here 2 years ago, we had 303 permits total. Last year we had 342 permits total, and this year we're estimating 420. So that is a little bit of an uptick in activity. Most of that is driven by new single-family townhouses and multifamily. But another thing that's promising to me is that there are 97 expected commercial additions. So those are remodels of commercial property, and that's usually a healthy indicator that people are reinvesting in commercial properties. So we're not ready to roll out any bans or anything at this point, but we're thinking this is a more optimistic outlook than we had last year at the same time. So this tells a little bit about the library fund. This is keeping with the commission, city commission's goal number 3, which is to address critical facility needs. We've been shopping basically for the last year for a site for our library, and we're still doing that. So we're going to continue to make these transfers until the library site is not only purchased, but once it's designed, we'll have a better idea of exactly how much money we will need, and then we'll have to go out for permission from the voters to approve that expenditure.
We're still looking at this crossing the DSP.
He said across from the DSB.
The county site? No, the county elected not to pursue that with us at this time.
At this time.
Yeah. Until they decide to review their master plan, they're not interested in talking about it.
And, can I ask a question? We're talking about here general revenue funds that come into us in terms of this 150,000 going over. Now, we've also got district funds that come in. Are you prepared to talk about that now, or would you prefer to do it later? Well, I was just wondering how much of the district funds are being committed to the building.
Maureen?
Well, actually, some of this is out of the district funds. The additional $200,000 that we're talking about right there and is set aside out of the district income. So a portion of my operating funds every year I set aside because I don't know what might come up that year, either for a purchase or engineering work or anything else that if we have to do due diligence on a site, then I need access to some operating funds right away.
Well, the first sentence reads transferred $750,000 to library building fund. Is that is the total of district
And general fund money,
General
that's
fund
the
money.
total.
Okay.
Yes, that's the
No,
total.
That answers my question.
It's not?
No, there's,
Okay.
the 200 is on top of that. 200 goes
Okay.
general fund over to the reserve. This is 750 going from the library fund to the reserve.
So that is sort of the building fund, so and that's district money?
This is.
Well, yeah, basically the 750 is.
That's what I'm asking. And that's a
Right.
transfer into a reserve fund for a building?
Correct.
Okay,
But there's also 200,000 going from general fund to that
Right.
same reserve fund.
okay.
And the general fund money, I mean, the agreement that I made with Maureen is that if you stay in the Carnegie for the time you're there, we already own the Carnegie, and before she was paying pretty high rent, and she was paying that rent every month as part of her operations cost. So the deal is, if you stay in the Carnegie and it's already paid for, then the money you were spending on that rent can go toward the new building.
She stays there for another 25 years.
I told her that.
That would not be
You stay there, as long as you want.
And that, the reserve fund also contains $1 million that the county originally gave
It
us?
doesn't contain it,
We
but
haven't
there's a
received it.
promise for that.
We haven't received it,
No, you have to have a project before
Okay.
you can apply for that
Okay.
money.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another reason not to wait 25 years.
There is an opportunity cost that I don't know is calculating in there, in the fact that it's nice for us to give a space for the library to hang their hat until we can get a real one built. But if they weren't there, there is a potential that we could be leasing that space out or doing something else with the Carnegie Center that could bring in some revenue.
Yeah,
Well, I am
But-
maintaining the entire building too, William.
yeah, she's making.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I don't think that's the case in the past. I mean, certainly it was used for things, but as far as a moneymaker,
Nothing
just
for
the,
me, no.
the maintenance on that age of a building, it doesn't pencil as a moneymaker, I don't think. But it's still a treasure we wanna keep. So. These are some other major capital projects. You know a lot about these, cause you've seen them occurring throughout the city in the last year. You might not have seen the water line replacements, but those are really important. The pump station upgrades, you probably haven't seen that one either, but those are also pretty critical. There's some more capital projects listed. And this amount for the Ermitinger is, we have a pretty broad range there because the way this thing, I mean, when I first looked at it, my first couple of weeks here, I thought, how much? Because you could take it apart and rebuild the entire thing for, I'm thinking half that, I don't know, but it's not modern construction for one thing. The goal here is to have it constructed according to all the standards of the National Park Service so that in the future they may be willing to take it from us for maintenance as part of their campus for Fort Vancouver here in Oregon City portion. But the other reason that that's that large of a differentiation between the 5 and the 7 is because the estimate we had was 7, but we're also learning that a lot of it depends on further study by our architects and engineers for the site, because the site itself is the problem. The soils under it for the first 10 or 12 feet are not stable, and so there's going to have to be an engineered solution to keep it where it is. And we have already started, we haven't started spending the money for the total renovation, we started spending money for some of those studies, because that money, the studies, the results of the studies actually help us leverage our money to apply for future grants for that site. So we have to almost, you're in, you're committed, and then to get the answers to apply for more money, you have to spend more money to get the answers. If that makes sense.
I'm gonna ask a question, and it's probably bad recollection, but I thought last year when we actually committed money, it was $150,000, not $100,000.
I think that's correct.
And you said 100,000.
Misspoke.
That was my spoke, okay. And we're transferring another 100,000 under this budget into that fund, is that right?
How much is the total for this year?
Which one are we talking
Ermitanger.
Yeah, we're transferring,
100.
Okay.
we're gonna do 250 this year and 150 next year. And there's also a grant, an estimated grant for 140 or so.
I think I have another slide here, but there's about 445,000 total in that line item.
After this
After
budget
this
is
year.
passed? Okay.
So swimming pool boiler replacement and master planning for 2 new parks, Glen Oak and Filbert Run. Those are also gonna, I think, make some people happy. And the Rivercrest Park restroom is actually not a reconstruction or renovation. That facility is apparently beyond renovation, more or less. So that amount includes demolishing the current structure and rebuilding an all-new facility.
Does that include piping into it?
I believe so. So these are just some interesting things here, particularly this part, because I haven't seen this in the last 10 years, where we only got, I say only, we have a 5% increase in dental, which is a fairly small portion of our load, our benefit load, and 4.4 in Kaiser, when we've been seeing 8, 10, 15 for the last 10 years. We actually anticipated 15 for medical this year, so we were pretty happy when we got these numbers.
Yeah, those are good numbers.
Yes, that's very helpful. And then I'm going to show you some of the photographs of the before and after. This is out of the pool. And you probably remember, we talked about this last year. I know that, Autumn, you were pretty animated when we were talking about deferred maintenance costs at some of these facilities. And
Yes.
we'll be back next year after we've kept our fire annexation pledge with some suggestions on how to bolster the funds for these deferred maintenance costs. But this, at least we did something out there. Actually, we did more than something. We did quite a bit for considering what we're up against. these are the acoustic tiles before, and really it's, the new tiles is not what kept these people out of the pool that you see here. It was just a coincidence that where the picture was taken.
I like the echoes.
Yeah,
It's still noisy.
yeah. Let's just show some of the tile work. This is one of the neatest things though, right here is this Kanema Park. And I wanted to remind everybody that at Kanema, we're having a ribbon cutting event, so you're all welcome to join in the fun. That's gonna be June 14th from 5 to 7 p.m. Kanema Children's Park. And this shows some of the construction and the neat elements that are out there. If you haven't been out there to visit the park, it's really nice. And this last year, I remember creating quite a stir in the neighborhood because I was stunned at how many people used this.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And then I was over visiting the library on the day it opened, and Maureen was there at the door with a mop. A bit of a frown, I remember. But
She probably looked like a librarian, didn't she?
it's one-stop shopping here. Play on this thing, play in this thing, and then go bother Maureen in there.
I love it.
But it's really neat to see the kids out there using that. I mean, you know, they're in there learning and doing what they should be doing in the library to truly work their brains, and then they get to come out and do this activity. I think that's really great. Good for the neighborhood. This is a view of West England Park. Some improvements. This is really nice as well.
That didn't cost us a lot.
Nope.
No.
And then, William, you were asking earlier about PMUF, so here, I hate to just show you pictures of pavement, because if you didn't see it
I
before.
love it, I love it.
But it's smooth and flat.
Fork in the road.
It drains properly, so. There's more.
We have, the draft of our annual report was just published today, so if you want to read a draft, the final draft essentially, it's over on the table.
Oh, nice, thank you.
You remember this?
Oh, yeah.
I still am so pleased that this thing went off without pedestrian injury or any other kind of a collision that I was just sure might happen, but.
Surprising.
So, 2 Whitman Street. This wasn't as bad as I thought it was gonna be either. Nancy told me, I didn't believe it.
First time I saw it.
Some of this is happening now.
Yes.
We all know. But it's sure gonna be nice when we're done.
Our covered bridge.
Rocky asked your question.
Oh, about the,
paper.
yeah, drainage.
The jug handle, this was our big one. This is
Yeah.
the single largest transportation project in the history of your city.
Yep.
So it's a big deal. And we have an impromptu ribbon cutting on the bridge deck. Just 2 weeks ago now.
I'd like to just comment, it doesn't have anything to do with the budget, but I just received here a letter that is going to be duplicated and circulated from the Beaver Creek Hamlet congratulating us on the communications we've had with the areas. And I think I was very pleased to see that.
Yeah, that's very nice.
I think it's a model for how to do one of these projects the right way. There's fair weather, which didn't hurt any. It was actually a little bit ahead of schedule as a result. And then this is something kind of cool. If you watch the frame on the right-hand side, I just wanted you guys to see this way. That way you know how fast government workers can really go. They actually.
It's a miracle. I love it.
Yeah, they do a better job with the lighting.
Yes.
There it goes.
Wow, isn't that just awesome?
Yeah.
And I was leaning over on the left side as I fall over.
Gives you faith in engineers, I think.
Yeah.
I had to reopen
All right,
it.
we did it.
Earlier
That's
today.
out of town.
4 hours.
Nice.
Well,
Very nice.
Great.
So your proposed budget is focused on the community needs and those commission goals that we mentioned earlier. It's balanced, responsible, meets all of the criteria established in Oregon budget law. And in closing my presentation, I want to give some recognition here, first to my assistant, Katie Riggs, who's ran out here. She's new to some of you. Katie's been with us about 7 months. She was a great help in putting this together. And also I want to say just a few things about Dave Wimmer. He's here tonight with me. This is his 19th year of service with the city of Oregon City. He came to the city February 14th, 1994, at a time when the city's finances were in desperate condition. The city could barely meet payroll, had only $2 million in total cash assets. In his time here, he has completed 57 budgets, 19 for South Fork Water Board, 19 for urban renewal, and 19 for the city. Dave leaves the campsite better than he found it, as the city now has $29 million in cash, a AA bond rating, 89 cents left on its tax levy, and perhaps the fiscally healthiest city at its size in the entire state. So please join me in thanking David Wimmer. Job well done, my friend. Job well done. So with that, we go to burning questions. Anybody has them?
Yes. I was just curious about, what are the Gaffney Lane sidewalks?
Page, please.
Roman numeral 5.
Okay.
Second paragraph on the streets bullet is talking about the major expenditures for these different projects include 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Number 6 is the Gaffney Lane sidewalks. I just didn't know what that was.
Especially because it says possible landslide mitigation.
Yes.
Well, there was that.
Right, yeah.
I believe that, let me check my details for you, but I believe we budgeted some to, start working on the sidewalks on the piece of property that the city purchased right next to Gaffney Lane School.
School,
I
yeah.
wanna dig through my data, but, okay, I'll get back to you.
Okay.
Page 139.
You got it, Dave?
Well, that's just where it came from.
Yeah. Any others while Nancy's looking into that?
One not so much tied to the budget, but David's leaving, is there an intended overlap between David and somebody else?
It depends on, we're having interviews for David's replacement at the end of this month. So it kind of depends on the moving schedule and some of those details, but we actually have it worked out where David can be on retainer for us for the first 3 or 4 months, maybe even longer.
Straight from Baja.
He said part-time,
Straight from Baja.
so I,
That's news to me.
well, that's what
I'd like.
That's what I thought we had worked out.
Oh, okay.
So
He's
Show me the money.
So we're gonna be a consultant now. huh?
we're hoping that there will be some overlap. That's the intention,
Yeah.
that we would have the
I'll be
recruitment
available
finished.
if you want.
Yeah.
Nancy,
He always says that.
So we've budgeted $50,000 for a possible in-house project relating to safe routes to school in the street fund. And whether or not that's gonna be enough to do it or not is not certain, but it's a way to start looking at it.
Commissioner Smith was speculating that was the one where that piece of property is sticking out into the roadway, basically.
And we own that property.
Oh, we do, okay.
We're getting rent on it every month.
Woo! Show me the
Laura,
money.
you had a question, right?
Yeah, in the PowerPoint, it said property taxes were going at 3.4, but then in this document it has 2.5.
Yeah, well, they're all right. I estimated assessed value at 2.5%. But last year, we got more taxes than what we budgeted. And so compared last year to this year's budget, it's up 3.4%.
So
3%.
The assessed value will probably go up about 2.5%. That's what that 2.5 is.
The reason I asked is because we just found out from the assessor, they have asked us to move ours down. We had originally used 2.7 from the assessor, and now he's saying 1.7.
Well, our letter we got last week.
Did you get a letter? I just wanted to make sure that you guys had most
That's a
up-to-date
good point.
numbers.
Yeah, our letter we got last week said 2.75 to 3.25.
Okay.
So it's, and I did 2.5, so.
And ours would count, well, we're doing the library district, so.
Right, and you got a lot of compressed property outside, which we don't so much. I was surprised when I saw this, and I just got this last week.
Yeah, we had another surprise, and I thought it was actually in my slides, but I was gonna talk a little bit about the volumetric equation for Blue Heron. PGE's franchise fee that they pay to the city, we changed the calculation when Blue Heron was such a big customer. It made sense for our franchises when they were in operation that we had a different calculation. Well, we changed the method of calculation, there are two available, and they brought it to our attention, I think, about 6 months ago, and what it means is we essentially get 300,000 more in franchise fees than we thought we were gonna get under the old method, so that was a great save.
Well,
It
the
was
reason
really-
it got so bad with volumetric is because Blue Heron was not buying electricity from PGE, they were buying it from some other part of the world, and so there was no revenue to get paid on, so then they had, the legislature came up with this volume thing, which was sort of a stopgap. But now that Blue Heron is not there, that, we get to go back and collect on the higher revenue, which all the rest, everybody else in the city has been paying on a higher rate, but we haven't been able to receive it, so now we are. Plus PGE rates are up, so that was nice.
Does that mean we'll be paying more through our rates?
Well, they did go up,
Yeah.
but the city didn't get a benefit of that until now.
Another question on the fund balance. I noticed it's a little bit under $1 million, and I was just curious what the policy is and what percent that is of your operating, and whether that's sufficient to get you from July to November when you start receiving your taxes.
Yeah, well, it will be, but yes, it is low. It would be about 8 or 9 million right now if we weren't throwing $1 million to subsidize other funds. And it's a little bit, it's about $1 million something lower because of our loan to South Fork too, which we're getting back. And we've got
won't
$2
be doing that
million
every year.
that we're not levying also, so we've got a lot of.
But you're comfortable with where it's at? And if we have-
Well, I wish
you
it
have
was
enough
more,
cash
I wish it was
flow.
more, but it'll, of course, as things go, it usually comes a little bit more than what I estimate anyway. But, yeah, it'd be nice if we had the 8 or 9 million, but it's
David,
also, it's all
David
nice.
tends to estimate all of our revenues very conservatively, which
That's great.
probably helps.
Yes.
Helps him
I
sleep,
think
I
that's
think,
wonderful.
mostly.
I guess it's the same question. I look at the contingency, this current fiscal year,
Yeah.
it's 7.2%, and it's going down to 5.2. I guess it's for those reasons that you talk about.
Right.
If, for example, we didn't make the loan to South Fork, do you just have a kind of a rough guess what we would have had?
Yeah, I got it specifically here, it's, well, I think they owe us, what, 1.3 million right now?
Yeah.
And that's split between the general fund and the first rate fund. So it's about, general fund portion is about 800,000 or 900,000, I believe.
What was that?
Right.
Okay.
I mean, that's just money that's out right now that's come back.
No, I understand that,
Yeah.
but that reduction we see was for, as partial to the loan, never
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, that's.
And
well,
essentially, we're using some of these things, like the payments we're transferring from Ermitinger, these are capital, kind of short-term projects, if you will. Shorter, I hope, than longer for Ermitinger, and this is, it's a concerted, focused effort that we're making to try to get that done and get it kind of off our backs.
As I was here in Dave Wimmer's earlier days, and we saw the contingency shrink and shrink
Yeah,
and
that was a
shrink.
real thing. We didn't have all these wonderful things in the closet now, like the 89 cents. It raises 2 million in taxes if we wanted it. We got, and like I said, we're able to subsidize and keep everybody on payroll and all the building and folks. And if push comes to shove, we could get stop that, you'd have $1 million right there.
And all those building transfers we're making too, that's another big, that's a luxury expenditure that most cities can't do, and we're making those investments because we need these facilities, but ultimately the public is paying for it. If we spend it wisely, then we don't have to raise taxes later. So, anybody else have questions about any of the other things we're doing?
I just have a general question about the, obviously, building industry, you talked about seeing improvement in permits and things for construction activity. We're still subsidizing those departments.
Yeah, a little less, but we
But
still
yes,
are.
it's smaller, so
Yeah.
what's the plan? I mean, what's the waiting time? Are we just gonna wait to see funding, or what are the, I guess, what are the thoughts from commissioners on when do you fix the problem and not have a deficit
Yeah.
if we don't see enough market improvement?
Well, I think we can ask our community development director, he's here tonight, we can have him comment on that, and then we can talk about it more broadly. if you'd like.
I think one thing that we're doing when we start looking at the budget for building and planning and GIS is that, you know, historically, we've been fortunate in that we've had enough funds in building to actually put back. And what we have not done a very good job of, and what we're working on, is to identify what costs, so we call it a subsidy to community development, but really, a lot of that money is to pay for planning and building services that I cannot pay for with building fees. So we've been trying to do a better job of identifying how much work are we doing, for example, on street trees, or Natural Resource Committee, Historic Review Board, Planning Commission, Urban Renewal, City Commission, of which we go as staff and contribute not only time at those meetings, but in preparation of those meetings. We've got, as I said, we've got street trees, we've got urban forestry. So there are a lot of services that we provide out of planning and building that are either from the general fund, because I can't charge a developer a subdivision fee and use that to pay for historic review. Or do we create a fee for that, or do we not provide that service? So and I think that's the part where we need to get you a better number. Is it, it's probably in the 35 to 50% range of what we do in terms of long-range planning or customer service at the counter or over the phone or at the meetings, code enforcement, follow-up. Quite a few services we provide fall under that aren't paid for in any other way. There is no other collection fee. So
Right, and you've gotta have those services, because people will show up and request those services, so you need to have the people there. That's the challenge is.
yeah.
And then as things get busier, you wanna have the people there to manage those coming in the door, because then you don't provide good service. So it's a fine balancing act, and I know you're challenged with that, so that's why I'm just curious kind of what the plans are. So I'm glad to hear you're kind of looking at where the work is going, and I guess we'll call it charging per department for those services to help.
Right, so
Keep the
to
people
me,
there.
it's not a straight, I mean, yes, you're taking money from the general fund, but it's not necessarily a subsidy, because you are getting
You're still providing service.
a demand is being
Right,
met
right.
to provide that.
Right.
And also with GIS, our Geographic Information System, which is our mapping
Right.
system, historically has been under community development. When we, historically, we did facility maps. And it's really morphed into information technology services for the city. So my department is really doing a lot of work on our website, on providing all the public outreach, so it's taken on a much larger role. And while we do have it split, we try and separate, we put IT more under the city manager general fund, and then GIS is still under community development, doing some work with Ms. Crushour's department for public works. But once again, that's a service that's being provided to the city, and that's another one that comes on that community development charge, and looks like that comes from the general fund, because there is no revenue for that, so. It's kind of a long-winded answer, but.
No, yeah, I just have to know that you're
Yeah.
you're being thoughtful about, I guess, allocating the work where it's going to the appropriate department, so that's helping balance and keeping the staff there, because it is getting busier, as you pointed out, and at some point, people will
Right.
show up and need their, plans, et cetera, reviewed, and you've got no staff.
That's
What are
part
you
of the
gonna do?
reason
What are you gonna
we're
do?
still trying to keep at least a skeleton crew there, so when that occurs. Back in the boom days between 2003 and 2006, a lot of cities in Oregon, well, there were several that could pay for their entire building operation just with fees from all the permits that were coming in. And cities were constantly trying to think about, well, gosh, what percentage is all the community-wide services and which ones are just for the developers and how do we charge them? And I think Tony did a good job here just now of explaining that this department does a lot of things that are for the broader community good that aren't just related to building fees and development. But, you know, there may come a time when we either have to bolster that amount from the general fund with our general tax revenue, or we have to look at individual fees for services that people get from the department. So that's really our two choices.
And the more carefully he articulates how that money is being spent, I think we also have a better track of do we need to give more money for this particular area, which area is growing, you know, or which is gonna drop off, that we can start not worrying about that as much. But
And that
without that
assessment is a-
articulation, we don't really know that.
That assessment is one of the reasons that we didn't refill that position that he had budgeted this year, because we thought, you know, we wanted to be in a better situation than we were last year with a lower amount of subsidy, if you will. But we didn't want to, so we didn't fill the position even though we had it budgeted. We just wanted to be conservative.
And there's, I suspect, a portion of potentially certain work you can contract with the county if you need to fill a gap, or no?
We could, on the building side, we have an
Building side.
intergovernmental agreement with Clackamas County, and they actually do some of our commercial electrical exams and residential electrical, so we do have an existing IGA
Okay.
with them.
So in our city, when building was at its peak, was the community development department, was it balanced pretty much with?
Oh, yeah, they had lots of money. I think they had like, I don't know, $700,000 or $800,000 fund balance. Because part of the problem was that there was a new state law when several years ago we had to divide the building department away from the planning department, so the building department was making money in those days and then sort of, I mean,
Right,
yeah,
so
whoever- it just killed the planning department. So now, and the building has used up its reserves several years ago too.
So it's possible for it to be balanced at the peak, but.
The building fund could be,
Uh-huh.
the planning fund under our current structure will not be.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a-
I mean, I can't, as I was trying to explain, I'm not allowed to take in a subdivision application and pay for long-term planning. If we want to do long-term planning, that either needs to come from grants or from the general fund or another source.
Okay.
Yes?
I just have two little comments. On this city organizational chart, I think there's some committees on there that are active now, that are listed as inactive.
That's quite possible.
And then under economic development, I don't see that the land south of Panema is listed as one of the goals in the next 5 years.
Where is that?
Which
Under
one?
economic development,
Page
first page.
55.
Oh, page 55, yeah, that's a good way to do it.
Yeah, I hear the number sequentially.
When you, I'm gonna ask a question, when you talk about the land south of Panema, you got that period where the bluff goes in and then it goes back out, and then you have that area where there's a marina and so forth. That's not within our city limits.
It's within the.
It's our urban growth boundary, but it's not
Right.
within our city limits.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Kathy, is that all you have? Any other questions, members of the public? Anything you'd like to ask, know about, clarify?
What are we
Make
gonna
a
be
comment?
doing next? What are we doing next?
Yeah, we want to,
Public comment has to be in there, so.
Yeah.
I agree. That's a good place to do it.
Yeah, so I figure I didn't see it, so I thought I'd choose that.
You gotta see if they have staff here.
I have some comments.
Renee, do you have a question?
If we were going to be going through each fund, or, that's why I was asking what we were doing next. And it's appropriate to ask, make those comments as we're going through the fund.
We're not gonna go, I've gone through all the funds just now, so we're not gonna go back through them, but
well,
if you have comments about them, just tell us and
You
we'll
bet.
turn to that page and go through them.
one thing we might want to take a look at page 4 where all the funds are listed. You can see the comparison by fund. You can see the except for the changes, like the street development, $12 million, that jumps out at you. The building reserve going up from 1.2 million, the library reserve up 900,000. The rest of them are just pretty small. Most, we haven't talked about most of the funds, the smaller funds. We just talked about the bigger utility funds. So if we want to go through those one by one, we've skimmed through them real fast before. It's almost, if you look at that page 4, there's almost like a management by exception. Most of them don't need to be.
I was a little bit confused about this page 4, David, thanks for bringing that up. For example, the last item on there, Arts Commission.
Right.
When I look for the 2011 and 12 past budget, there was 5185 allocated or adopted, and this year there's none.
Right, it's done. If you see back here, it says history only. On page 231, it has to stay there for 2 or 3 years while it works its way off, because there's actual sitting there for a couple
Okay.
years. 2 or 3 years that won't show up anymore.
Well,
Rocky has a question.
well, now I do.
Yeah.
Okay, so say that again.
It's dead.
Well,
It's used up. There's no money.
okay, but the money that was there is money that was from, because the Arts Commission went out in like,
Right.
oh God, 2000,
Yeah, several years ago.
2007?
Right.
Okay, but, so then there was still money in it till 2011?
Well,
And
there's
it
actually
increased?
there was only like 2,600. We thought there might be 5,000, but 2,600, and we actually used that for artwork in the city hall. This traveling art show that goes through there every quarter or whatever. That's where we just over the last couple of years
Who
we sort of
approved, I
spent
mean,
that.
was that a city commission, like, decision? I mean, because if the Arts Commission didn't exist,
Right.
who then decided how the money got spent for? I mean, that was just by the city commission then, right?
Yeah, Scott, you want to throw in your
I guess the question is, because one of our goals is to restart the Arts Commission this year, so if we had money in there, you know, I'm curious as to where it went and
Yeah, like
how,
I
what
said.
that process was, but,
It went, like, we be walking out City Hall and see all the artwork changes all the
Right.
time. That's where it went.
We're not paying for that anymore.
Yeah.
But it was identified as a funding source for a short amount of time, but then I think last year in the budget, we just budgeted fully for the rotating art in City Hall to be paid for out of the general fund.
okay, so that came to the city commission, it wasn't through,
Yeah, that was the intent when this budget.
I mean, in our budget process it did, but,
There was like $2,600 and that was used up this year, or last year actually. Now it's being paid for from general fund, right?
Yes.
Yeah, just to, 442 on the Arlington House restoration. Now, we have gotten monies in there before. We showed it in our adopted 2011-12, there's none. Now we have a 415,000.
I'm working on a supplemental budget, and I've spent most of the day on it today, which you'll be seeing on May 2nd, where it establishes that fund for last year and establishes $250,000. So next time you see this, it'll be a revised 2011-12, and we'll have $250,000.
Okay, very good, okay.
William?
An item that I've been taking the lead on, and then this really surprised me. On page 35, I think some of you know that an area that's near and dear to my heart of neighborhood associations. And last year we had budgeted $36,050.
Yeah, that included trail news. I'm taking that down today as up to $25,000 also.
Okay, and the actual is 28, and then it shows the proposed is 25.
Correct.
So where's trail news in there?
It's down there at the bottom, 30,860.
Says trail news.
Very last one.
So to put those two together, then that's what? So it went from 36,000 to 55,000?
Yeah, well, I have a budget adjustment that's throwing, it's taking that, making the 36,000 for this year, taking it to 25,000, and I'm setting up a new account, just like we're doing for Ermetinker, for whatever the difference is, and I'm also.
Ernie.
May I take your question?
Sitting really close to you.
I was hoping nobody would hear that.
It's on tape now, Dave.
Love it.
Heard it all the way to the
Freudian
West
slip
Bridge.
for sure.
The reason that I asked the question, real frankly, is that we've had some neighborhoods concerned about the amount of money that they have to produce newsletters is inadequate, and that's why they aren't having as many meetings as that they thought they ought to have.
So they're gonna have 25,000 bucks.
But that'll be exclusively dedicated to neighborhood associations.
Exactly.
Yeah. See, we were taking all out of the same fund before.
Yeah, it always.
We got some people
Thank you,
questioning, wow, they're using our money for trail news.
Right.
No, so we said, let's just separate them out, and then
Yep.
there's your money.
Yep.
and when it's gone, it's gone, and
That works.
so that kind of ends that argument, I think.
Good. So there's still no funding for a part-time even neighborhood liaison.
Right.
I know that some of the neighborhoods are concerned that we now will not be having representation at the neighborhood meetings, which Chris has been so kind to provide for us.
Well, I don't think Chris was providing representation. She was
Well-
attending the meeting, but she wasn't providing, I have my department heads now going to those meetings as needed, and on a rotating basis, I go as well. So we're gonna have more information, frankly, than any coordinator I can think of. Because we're the specialists in those areas where we're providing the service. So I don't, Katie has taken the other part of Chris's job as far as the CIC. So I just don't want to spend money there if we don't have to, if we're getting just as good of, in fact, I think our interface with the neighborhood associations in the city has improved in the last 2 years, that we haven't had that coordinator position. And as long as it's healthy and working, I don't want to just throw money at it, thinking that that's gonna, I don't know what that's gonna do, that's needed.
Well, there's still some care and feeding that needs to be done to the neighborhood associations. I mean,
Right.
there's,
But we don't want the city, I don't think we want the city doing it, taking it over like a city function.
Oh, no.
Part of the beauty of it is it's generated from the grassroots, from the citizens and volunteers like you that are making that happen. So I think we want to continue that, not make it seem like the city's sort of taking it over.
it was a bit of a surprise to a lot of people that they felt like their lifeline had been cut. Might have been nice to sort of ease us all into that there's going to be, because it's a significant change to us. We've all gotten used to Chris, and I can understand that things need. I mean, she can't be in that forever, and Katie's going to do a good job, but.
Yeah, it was a pretty high intensity job last 2 years.
Absolutely.
If there's combat pay on the schedule, she would have said. Earned
She
it.
definitely would earn
Hopefully they
that.
won't do the same thing to Katie.
No, they won't.
Yeah, I'm gonna look out for that too.
Well,
So when did that change take effect?
Gosh, it's been about a couple of weeks now. I think they passed the baton.
And was there communication put out to the neighborhood associations?
Absolutely.
it
And
was
to the
after the
commission.
fact that it was communicated to the neighborhood association.
It was on the
It
day,
happened.
yeah. Well, I don't know if it was after the fact, we went to the meeting that day, yeah. But Chris is another reason she's got more workload now because
Yeah.
Lieutenant Nunes retiring and was doing all the certification work for the PD, and now Chris has volunteered to do that.
Well, she got volunteered.
I don't know exactly how that happened, but
I know some of us commissioners too, we've been going to meetings, I wonder if we kind of coordinate between us, who's going to which neighborhood meeting when,
that's a
and
good
kind of
idea.
spread it out a little
Yeah.
bit. That way, utilize our resources that way.
Yeah.
I think it's really important for us to have representation, but just like you've heard me say this, but I don't want to sound like a broken record, but when you start talking about we need a position and you even have a name for it, the first thing my brain does is say, what's the problem we're trying to fix? Before we decide what the position is, that we need a position, and that even what to call it. So I want to look at the service and the connection between us and the neighborhoods, and I want it to be strong. So I think it's important for leaders in our organization, our department heads and I, and other folks in our organization to attend those frequently.
I guess I sort of wish that we had had a job description or of the tasks and all the work that Chris was doing. I don't know if she ever really documented all the things that she was doing.
Yeah, she met with Katie and went like this. No, but there's.
It's easier for Katie to just do it, huh?
One comment I will make is, Chris was attached with the police.
Right.
Okay, maybe not nearly as attached to the library or community service. So now it's gonna flip, and we're gonna have Katie more attached to the internal, but who's gonna be the good connection to the police? Katie's gotta be able to have that good connection there to tell the neighborhood about police activities also.
Well, I think the police department would probably send officers to those neighborhood association meetings, because some of the district patrolmen, I mean, I've been to neighborhood association meetings where the 2 district officers that are assigned to that district show up.
Yep, that happens.
And provide information. I think that's
And
better
sometimes
than-
it doesn't happen though.
Yeah.
So,
One advantage too, Katie is on our executive team, so she comes to all of our staff meetings, or most of them. And so she knows a little bit about everything in the organization, and
right.
Chris's information was mostly in the PD, so she was great for that, but didn't always have the same ready at hand information that Katie might have about other departments.
right.
So,
So that kind of makes me a little nervous. Just so, I'm just putting it out there.
well, let us know what you think, if we need to provide more employees at those meetings or different, again, let me know what problem we're trying to fix, and I'll be happy to dispatch the right people.
I'll work on trying to articulate the concern. I'm not gonna call it a problem, but the concern that, my suspicion is the neighborhoods wanna make sure that they have continued access to your office, which I'm sure Katie will be able to provide, but she'll only be providing that really once a month, or through some scattered emails. It's a different feeling to just see a few, 1 or 2 representatives from a neighborhood once a month than it is to go out and see 8, 10, 12, 20 neighbors and hear what their concerns are. It's just it's gonna be a different period of
Well,
adjustment.
let's stay in touch on it.
Okay.
And we'll play it by ear, and we'll see if we need to make other adjustments, we will certainly do that.
Okay. Did you have another comment on that? Okay. Then I had one
Keep
other.
it to myself.
One other area of concern, and it's just more out of curiosity, is back on page 43 when we're talking about the city recorders. I am so pleased with what we are doing in our city recorder's office. But I was curious about Granicus increasing its budget by $12,000 a year. Maybe that's in the grand scheme of things that's not a lot.
Good catch, it's a great opportunity for us to have Nancy and I talk about what that means and what it's gonna do.
And the minutes transcription, I'm also curious about that, nearly $3,000. That almost doubled. Page 43.
I don't have that. I don't have a 40.
What do you have?
Oh, there it is.
It's like magic.
There's a between 42 and 44.
Not a number guy.
So, with the grant, the contract has increased. Part of it is because we are purchasing the new Legistar system, which is an agenda processing solution. So, but we're actually moving from one solution to another. So another one is going away, so which was about a $5,000 a year service contract. So that's going away, but the $12,000 will come in, and that extra $7,000.
Differential, yeah.
Is in payment for the new Legistar system. So there was an upfront cost to purchase the system, and that's just a one-time cost, and then there's the maintenance on that. Let's see, there was, we also purchased a training system. It's a training module
where we can do human resource orientations, we can do in the police department where there's lots of different trainings. They can, where you have testing that's required, that we can produce that. We purchased the system, but we didn't purchase the implementation of it yet because it was a little bit too costly at this time. But since we were making these upgrades now, we purchased the system. So that's the increase there as well.
And the transcription?
It went up 3,000. I have to look at that.
Minutes transcription went from 3,100 to 6,000.
I'd have to look at it to see why it went up that much. I'm trying to think. We've added.
That's not all.
We
that
have
is.
a bargain there, minutes transcription contract. But I'm serious. I'll have to look. I can't imagine it was only $3,000 in 1 year. Let me look at that and I'll have to get back to you on
Nancy,
that.
I trust you implicitly that you're making all the right decisions. I'm just curious.
Okay.
I can tell one of them is Natural Resources Committee, because I watched their last meeting and it was pretty long. It was
But
quite
we don't.
a couple hours of.
They don't do the
transcript
transcription
those?
for that.
They don't do the transcription on that, but they do the recording.
I'll look that
And
up
we don't
for
really
you.
have a way of measuring. I know, as my understanding is, Willamette Falls Media Center does not have a way of tracking how many people are actually watching it live or on its reruns. I am assuming that in our IT, we can see how many hits we get to a particular video and how many people are watching that.
Not in our IT, but Granicus there's a reports tab inside the software, and you can go in and say, I want to know what was the most watched video in this 30-day period.
Okay.
And just for your information, the CIC has been in the top 10.
Uh-oh.
I know,
I better wear
The
clean
ones
shirts.
that has been hit the most.
And can we
Over the
get
last
history
year.
on that? So can we see, are people watching Urban Renewal Commission more frequently than they were 2 years ago or 5 years ago?
We can set a range. We could say we want to see from this date to this date, and then it would show.
I'd love to see some reports on that.
Sure,
How
anytime. I
frequently
can,
those-
just come into the office and I'll
I'll
pull
make
them
an
up for you.
appointment.
Sure, and then I actually have already committed and done some more PR and just to get the word out. It's going into the neighborhood association newsletters that this service is available, because I don't know that everybody knows that they can just log on and or go to the
We try to
website
tell
and
them.
watch them.
If
You know,
they
so
aren't
we're just
watching
gonna
us,
do
tell
some
them.
more advertising for
Yeah.
that as well.
Got it. Thank you very much.
One of my areas is page 83, and this is parks maintenance. It's a little hard to tell, but are there 5 full-time staff or 4 full-time staff, do you know offhand?
We have 5 full-time maintenance staff, plus Larry Potter, our parks and cemetery manager.
And you can look on page 81 and see what the staff is.
Those positions are split between parks and cemetery budget though.
Yeah. You're talking about Larry Potter's job, position. One of the concerns coming up with the commission, of course, is that we're building more parks, and we've had this flat. I think when I
Yeah.
first came to Oregon City, there were 4 maintenance staff. Apparently, in the last 22 years, you've increased it by 1.
By one person, yeah.
Yeah,
And
by one.
that's since I've been here for almost 8 years.
Yeah, and this is an issue because we're also getting desires in our natural areas to control invasives and so forth. There's some volunteer work going out there, that's fine, but it's one of these things that we have to look at for additional funding in the future.
Yeah.
And there's been some discussion about whether we could possibly at one point or another have a parks maintenance utility fees similar to what we had at the streets pavement utility maintenance fee. It's a dialogue that's going to be coming, and I simply wanted to bring that up as it's time, because we've been really flatlined in terms of staff for a long, long time.
Yes.
And the needs are increasing, and people want parks, and so this is something I think we'll have to take a look at.
That's a good point. That's even, that even ties in back to Mr. Russell's comments last year about deferred maintenance of the pool, because that's one of the things the commission this year looked at in their goal setting, and we, I think, more or less supportive of it for next year, but we couldn't do it this year because we're keeping our pledge to on the fire annexation. But next year, the commission is still that inclined, us be expecting to see that in your budget next year.
It's something that may not be a longer term issue, but we are seeing compression starting to come in. If it comes in on a property by property basis, it hasn't affected Oregon City much. But what will happen is if we increase our tax rate and we have compression in place, it's going to eat into, first of all, the sheriff's levy and also the vector control levies, because those special levies are the things that start first. So if we take a look at that, we really have to have somebody to come in and tell us how we'll be impacting services of other agencies.
Well, that's one of the keys to utility fees, is they don't affect the compression.
Right.
And so if you have a choice of funding something with a utility fee versus taxes, and you're in a compression scenario, you definitely want to think about that as one of the big factors. And then, of course, before we realized we had a compression problem 2 years ago, I was talking to you about Parks Maintenance utility fee, because you have so many tax exempt properties here being a historic county seat. And you have a lot of exempt properties, but you have a lot of demands on the parks. So there's really two very good reasons to be looking at
Well,
parks.
PMOF got around it, and you're proposing that perhaps a parks maintenance.
Yeah.
Yes.
Also be able to get around those.
But it's one of
Right.
those things that, we'll really have to get out to the public and talk to them ahead of time.
Yeah,
We
because you
know
can
how to
build
do
the
it.
argument that you can get around the exempt properties because everybody uses the road. You might say, well, maybe you can't say that the church uses the parks or the county uses the parks or.
Well, it's parks and open space utility fee is what we're looking at. So open space, for example, would include the promenade and those areas where we maintain and provide service there, where we all, last year about this time, we were pulling roots and invasives up.
It will be again this week.
We will be again this weekend, so, yeah, it's for open spaces as well, and,
By the way, went, a little over budget, which to me is fine. Especially when you counteract that with a project like Wesleyland Park, where we probably saved, I don't have any idea how much we saved, but there's two incredible parks that, so I guess I'm just looking at, how much do we really save with this partnership with the high school, that really probably allows us to do other things that we might not be able to do.
No, that's a great point. I'll take it a little bit further than that, not just the current project, the restroom and concession building, but the previous projects that they've done at Wesleyland, the amazing picnic shelter structure that's there, which is, it's phenomenal.
Yes.
The arbors on the sidewalks and some other minor things they've done, it's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. I can't give you an exact number, we've kind of guesstimated, and I'd have to go back and look that information up, but between all of those projects with the volunteer, the donated labor, and then they also, they go out and solicit materials from local businesses. They'll go out and get a concrete company to come in and donate the labor and some of the material. Now, the city has contributed some of the money towards those projects, but overall, we've estimated, I've ballparked it in the probably $300,000 to $400,000 range for all those projects and saved money.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible. And if you have not gone, we all live in Oregon City, but we kind of take some of these places for granted, I think, sometimes. But and even people that live in, or people that work at the high school, so few of them have actually gone to the park to see it. And when you see, like it's been a while since I've been to the park, so seeing the finished building there, or nearly finished building with a concession stands restroom, I can't even believe it. So if people haven't got to that park, it's amazing. So I just hope we continue to do that project or help. I think that partnership is crucial, and I hope that continues for a long time to come if it can, from both the school district point of view and the city point of view, because we have a lot of parks.
I love it.
You have to put up with that across the hall from you?
You wouldn't believe what I put up.
And not just on the money
So
side.
we have a lot of parks, and I mean, and I already know they're working on some projects possibly coming up that I've been talking with Brad at the high school about. So it's neat to see that partnership and how it could expand to other places in the city, in other parks, and bring a lot. If all of our parks look like those, I mean, it's unbelievable. And what's so great about it, it's not only, I mean, it's an obvious benefit that these kids, a lot of them, even though they hate to admit it now, will live in Oregon City their entire life.
Of course they don't want to admit it.
They won't admit it, but they will be here, most of them, and have kids here, and they'll drive past those parks and they will take care of those parks because they built them. And so it's just amazing. So I think that's probably you know, in the 4 years that I've been part of or 3 in a little bit, that's got to be probably one of the coolest things. There was an email about a couple weeks ago that I'm hoping I didn't miss the deadline for, which, and I'll probably talk to you about it. It's they're basically looking either statewide or nationwide for these examples of how youth and how youth in general are participating in collaborative projects with cities. I can't think of anything better than that, what we're doing.
I really appreciate you mentioning that, and along those lines, in case folks didn't know, I know some of you were on the commission a couple of years ago when we announced that Mr. Tucker, Britt Tucker, the instructor for the high school construction program, and his class were the recipients of a state Parks and Recreation Award for the Volunteers of the Year. And we actually brought him in at a commission meeting and presented the award. And Britt got to come to our state Parks and Recreation Conference and receive that award in front of all the professional association. And so we've tried to give a lot of recognition, and we do continue to work with them, and they're doing other projects in other parks.
Scott, that might be a good thing to bring up in discussing overruns in other parks. You know, the balancing act that's going on.
Yeah, I
'cause
think it's
much
very easy
further.
to say, look what we were able to do. And, I mean, part of the overruns at the Kenema Park were because we made improvements that needed to be made and
Right.
But this is
and probably
forcing
took a mediocre park to just an extra level, which is just incredible.
And I think, it's a technical thing, but I don't think that park wasn't over budget, it was adjusted.
Right.
The budget was adjusted.
Yeah.
It was within our, it was within our
That's a
adopted
technical
budget.
term
Right.
that Wimmer
Right.
knows
Yes.
very well. There's a difference between being over
Yeah.
budget and
But so
adjusting.
people know the
But so
context
people can
of
see
it,
that
huh?
balance, that
Right.
we've got to.
You know, if you get to a project, I mean, just like when you remodel your house, you get to the bathroom, and if you have money left, you say, hey, maybe we should get this or that special shower, or whatever it is you want. If you've got money left at the end of the project, you can do those
Well,
things,
and
and
the
that's what we
perfect
did.
example is I don't remember the massive discussions about the fence, and I never knew what the final outcome was until I walked through the park and I saw the fence, and I was like, oh my God, it's beautiful. So, you know, to me,
Yeah.
it needed to be done, and
I'm glad
it's
that
so
happened.
amazing.
And back to a budget perspective on it, beyond it being beautiful or amazing or cool or unbelievable, I suspect that there is, and perhaps if there's an economist in the room that would be able to realize this too, maybe we would need a realtor or somebody to say, how does the property value increase
Oh, yeah.
in proximity to a nicer park? And I'll bet we could put a dollar amount on that, just like I know that we can put dollar amounts on the value of trees. I'll bet we could put a dollar amount of property values that are increased by the proximity of a nice park.
Of course, we can't increase our taxes based on that. That's
No, but I think that we could use that as a selling point to sell the city,
Mhm.
to say, you know.
For economic development.
We have,
Well, yeah, for economic
that
development.
happens to be what I do for a living, is know about parks things. No, there are national statistics that have been shown exactly that the value of a home near a built park is greater. Obviously, the quality of life things and all that, but you're exactly right, Wayne. There are statistics and there are studies that have been
It
done
would be
that prove that.
interesting to see the dollar amount of that value as leveraged by the volunteer and the investment that the city has made in these to increase the value of the city. That's what I'm going to be getting at. I had two other comments to make, budget related. And I'll give the softer one first. The softer one is, I don't like to be accused of ever having rose-colored glasses or anything. I'm pretty conservative about those things. But am I naive to imagine that with all the money that we are setting aside for public works, for the library, and for the Erminger House, and these projects that we are squirreling away all this money wisely for future expenditures, when those projects have become realized, does that mean we're going to be able to have that much more money to do other things, such as maintaining and developing new parks or other projects? Or is that going to collapse? Oops, we have a little girl's hand in the corner here.
Thank you, sir. Let me just address the library portion. I'm putting aside an amount annually that I think will be close to the amount that I will need to pay for the bonds that I will need to take on to build the building. And so I want to put that money aside, not just to squirrel it away, but to make sure that I can provide the staffing and stuff that, at least at a certain level, and pay the bonds. Do you see what I'm saying?
Is the payment of those bonds considered capital expenditures?
It is.
It's debt service.
That's right.
Debt
It's debt
service.
service.
You got several kinds. You sell the bonds, you got revenue, you build the library, you got capital outlay, and then as you pay off the debt, you have debt service.
But it can all be done with the same money.
Yep.
So then, are you saying that after the library is built, that we'll still be needing to take that money out?
We'll still be needing to apply a certain amount of the income from the district towards the debt service annually.
Until the bonds are paid off, of
Until the
course,
bonds
but.
are paid off. Unless we.
But William, you ask a broader, more theoretical question.
Yes, I did.
Which in theory, I see what you're saying, and I wish it were quite as simple as that. I think what we're gonna find is that unless we wanna defer maintenance, you basically start saving for your next car as soon as you pay off your current car, if you're smart.
Yeah.
And that's essentially, I think there's some extra money that will be available, frankly, when those transfers are finished, but I think there's gonna be maintenance, and hopefully we'll have those set up on a depreciation schedule, so that when those assets are liquidated or they've used up their service life, we'll be in a position to do something about it. So I don't think it's gonna be a big windfall. I think there's gonna be money for maintenance that's gonna take up a
Well,
lot.
I think another thing too is information technology is changing so rapidly, and library's gotta be one of the places that's really gonna have to keep up with that for its public services, so that'd be an ongoing.
So I just don't want to have expectations of, we get those projects completed, and we'll be rolling in cash.
Well, if
We'll be
we
using
are,
some of that cash that we'll be rolling in to continue to pay for the facilities that we're using now to just build it.
and we're not a savings institution. If we're rolling in something, there ought to be service levels, because that's what we do. We provide service.
Great, that brings me to my second point.
Okay.
Last week, I took a bold move on my part to get involved in yet another aspect of the city. Call me crazy, but I went to the school district's presentation on their, what do they call it, adjustments or
Oh.
Budget cuts.
No, there's another word for it. Configure, card shuffling.
Reconfiguration.
Reconfigure something, some euphemism for shutting schools down. And,
Yes.
Consolidating. Is that what it's?
perhaps, and Tony needs to be in here. Because one of the issues that, Tony?
Tony?
One of the issues that came up in this school district issue was the fact that if they're going to be needing modular buildings, that there is some permitting process that they have to go through. And they are very, very concerned, at least the school board sounded very concerned, that the permitting process, while not onerous, and everybody understood the necessity for the safety and health and all those reasons for going through all of these things, they were concerned about the timeline. And why this ties back to the budget, I want to know is there a way, and would it help if we were able to allocate some additional funds on a short-term basis to get those permits expedited to help the school district?
We met with the school, David Frater and I met with the school district representatives a couple of weeks ago. If you start laying out the timeline for pre-app, put together an application, submit application, public notice, planning commission hearing, then pull your building permits, your engineering plans, it's not a realistic timeline, even under a best case scenario of expediting those times.
And there's no way of fast-tracking that.
There certainly is. I think that we discussed that with the neighborhood, with the school district representatives, and we just really felt that even fast tracking and assuming everything went perfect, it's a very, very aggressive timeline, and what happens if you miss?
And we offered to concentrate resources just for that, for them.
Good.
I mean, we made that offer right there in the meeting. But even they looked at the timing, and we brought out the timeline, and there's the 120-day rule, there's the publication notices.
Yeah.
And when Tony brought all that out, we didn't have to say this won't work. They said, this won't work. We can't do it on
They
this.
indicated that it was exceedingly optimistic.
Yeah.
Exceedingly optimistic.
Yeah, it was a little more colorful.
But you have to also understand, maybe the people that these guys met with were not the people that were at your meeting. And
No,
maybe
Ted was
those,
there, you know,
maybe
Mary was
they
there.
hadn't gotten back together.
They were all there. They were all there.
It sounds like
Well,
you
the
folks
board
met with
members
them
are gonna bring up
We-
these
we have
questions.
that
as fast as you can.
And we've also left the door open if they need more help. Come and let us know, and we'll try to help in any way we can. I think they also have more work to do to make this decision. I mean, it's a hard decision for them. And I think that they're not
Well,
quite ready to
they
move.
boiled it down to two options, and then they basically asked for a vote from all the parents that there, and it was pretty conclusive that they, what their choice was gonna be. I'm not gonna broadcast it because it's not public, but I think they've made their decision what they want to do.
It was a public meeting. It is public.
Well, the board hasn't voted on it yet, but the opinion from, it was a good crowd of people that showed up there, was that they would close both schools and move to a 3-year middle school scenario. And God bless them, they're taking a very positive approach on it, and they are saying, they're talking about all the benefits that are gonna come to a 3-year middle school program and the cost savings that they're gonna have by,
About 900,000, I think.
yeah, they are definitely gonna make some savings there.
Right, it's cost savings, but having a child in the middle of that
Yeah.
situation.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, absolutely.
I have a problem with the 6th grader in middle school, that's
Yeah.
the side here.
Yep.
So that's a whole
Again,
different.
whole different-
One of the comments
Yeah.
by a 6th grade mother was saying, you know what, kids are surprisingly more resilient than the parents are.
It's what they're being exposed to,
Ah,
to be adult things at that level.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the problem.
anyway, I didn't mean to turn this into a school
No, I
district
know, I know.
decision, but,
No.
or discussion,
Yeah.
but I just wanted to know if there was.
They're great partners.
Okay,
And
that's
we'll do
fine.
anything we can to help them.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments by anyone or anyone at all?
I have one macro one for our law enforcement, is we obviously see kind of what's coming up this year with, what do you, I guess, perceptions on how that will impact the city.
I don't know how prior negotiations have gone, looks like the contracts coming up.
labor contract?
Yeah, labor contracts are
Labor
coming up.
contract was,
So-
has been settled, we,
Oh, okay.
start, again, next year, it expires in, June 30th of 2013, so we'll start negotiation probably in about, January of next year.
Okay, I'll worry about it next year.
Last contract settled in one day.
Was the quickest,
That was
yeah.
a record.
Yeah.
Awesome, cool.
It's kind of interesting to note that when I first came on the commission, ASME was the easiest union to deal with, the police union was the most difficult one to deal with. That changed around.
Any other comments or questions? Well, Mr. Frazier, I do have a question, and I think, as you know, I don't ask the typical line item questions. I take more of a broader approach, kind of a balcony overview. First of all, I think the budget is a good budget, once again, as in last year. I think it's a balance. I think it's conservative. I think it's fair. I think the department managers worked hard. My guess is they didn't get everything they wanted in the first round. Chief, did you get all the cops you wanted?
I never have all the
I was gonna say, that's a loaded
So
question.
sensitive to that, and yet I think it reflects discipline. To me, it looks like a combination of things probably. Spending control. I think your department managers are doing a great job in prioritization and goal setting. And then whatever marching orders you gave them, pick your top three, whatever it was, I think they did a good job. And then a lot of it too, I think a lot of credit goes to Mr. Wimmer in the revenue forecasting, being very conservative. And I think that puts you in that position where a lot of local governments, especially small cities, aren't in the position, the financial position we with such a healthy ending fund balance and a contingency accounts and things like that. So.
Well, the PGE franchise, cities I've worked in before, they would have had to rely on that for operations. And when Dave came to me, I said, so we landed on community chest.
Yeah.
You know, because, and we didn't have to spend,
Right.
which was a good,
Right. Great.
was a good position to be in. A lot of people here have been disciplined over the years. They've got
Well,
us.
and I think it's showing as it did last year. And I think things will improve. I mean, when you drive around, you see development, you see construction. There's certainly a lot of traffic on 213 and Beaver Creek Road, and so I think things are changing. I hope they. So my question is, you know, from kind of a lofty perspective then, and I have to tell you, out of the entire document, sorry, I know a lot of people work really hard on this document, but the one that I really like and read the most is this one, because it's kind of a Reader's Digest version, and it's something I can get my head around. So my question is, you obviously have goals, and it looks like you're making progress financially towards those goals. You've got benchmarking going on there, you've got some plans that are reaching beyond the fiscal year, and I know Mr. Wimmer's plan, and your plans, is to move to a biennial budget, which, yep, I think that's got a lot of credibility there to that idea. You feel good about where you are and where you want to go in the financial environment and the financial situation that you have right now, that you're achieving those goals?
Yes, of course, you always have a little anxiety when you've had a long-term finance director and you're making a change there. So we have 4 good candidates now that we're focused on, and we're going to have our interview process. I rely a lot on process, so we're going to have a pretty active, engaging process the candidates will go through. And at the end, then we'll finish our background checks and reference checks. And you know, we filled 2 key positions this year, one in my office and one in economic development. And I think the results speak for themselves, and I'm hoping that we'll have the same result in our finance director. And then I think adding that assistant finance director is I think that is actually gonna pay for itself, the way we manage our funds. Because Dave does an amazing job, but it's one person doing the job. I've said it before, he's done the job of 3 people. And if you go in his office, you can tell.
Yes.
See all the papers.
He knows where everyone is.
He knows exactly what they are.
Nancy's pretty much got the whip out and got all this.
Yeah, I lost
The
one
commission
there. I was
level
trying
is
to
all
retire.
paperless, but we're making up for it in the finance.
Well, most of
finance
it is
directors are-
paperless.
Yeah, that's true.
Most everybody lucky.
But, you know, that's a little bit of anxiety, frankly, for us, because we're making a change there. But I think all the applicants that we have are qualified, and I'm hoping for a good result. And So there is the meet and greet for those folks too coming up. Jim, what's the date?
25th, Wednesday the 25th, at the High Cliff, excuse me, from 5:30 to 7.
Would love to have
Out
you
back in the
guys
fireplace
come
room.
there and size up the candidates and meet them, greet them, fill out a little card, tell me what you think. I read every one of them, every card that gets submitted, I read them all. And if you say submitted by the budget chairman, it might mean even more. No, just kidding.
What time was that?
I'm just kidding.
5:30 to 7. on
But it is
Wednesday
good
the
to have that
25th.
feedback, you know, so I would like to have that feedback.
Any other business we need to take care of before I ask for a motion? And Mr. Wimmer, is that one motion or two? Do we need one inclusive?
You need to approve the budget for a total amount, and you need to set a tax rate, fire levy amount.
I think I did this right after 5 years.
No, I
So it's
have
three
to
separate
look
motions?
at it every year.
Yeah, okay.
But I did have if we're gonna be there, I need to make one little change to let you know that
Okay.
it's it's on page 245. Yeah, last week, or before last, the Civic Improvement Trust met, and I always throw a number in the budget, because I don't know what they're gonna award for sure. But anyway, they awarded $52,275 instead of the $45,000 I had, so I need to increase that 45 to 52, and also decrease the contingency by 72.75. It doesn't change the overall budget.
Didn't we get that 7,000 from the rollover?
Yeah,
Money coming
with
up.
fund balance accumulation and stuff. We're pretty much spending that fund dry. We've been spending more than we've been bringing in the last few years.
But it's not like we added another $7,000. $7,000 had already been earmarked.
It was there. We just
Yeah.
hadn't spent it before, and we're not gonna spend it for the grant from several years ago.
No, but we're gonna
Next year.
spend it on this year.
But some of that came from the fact that somebody did use their grant.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
So it's not just taking money out
Yeah,
of the budget.
it's a park place.
Park,
something,
Shelton
sign-
Park, trails. or
Signage,
something.
right. They spent half of it.
Yeah, Oregon Trail signage.
Yes.
Well, with that modification, I'd move that we adopt this budget, if this is an appropriate time to do that.
We have your
We have to have the numbers.
specific number?
Okay, yeah, well, it's all here on your, well, since we didn't really change that, it's gonna be,
So you have to
yeah,
read.
So
establish the
William,
next.
if you could put it into a motion, is that correct?
Yes.
Right?
Right.
And he's specifically talking agenda item 10.
10, 11, and 12 is what you're
Can
doing.
he do them all in one?
Sure. Without taking a breath.
All right, William, spotlight's on you. So agenda item 10, 11,
And
and 12.
All right.
Put it into a form.
I would make a motion that this committee adopt
Actually, you're approving it.
the,
Approving the word, adopting will happen by the
They'll do
commission.
that. All right, well, I move that this committee adopt the,
Approve.
we approve. I'll move this committee approve the maximum total expenditures for each fund, proposed at $81,375 and $677.
81 million.
81,375,677 for all 39 funds. And that we approve the total taxes for local government as an amount and/or rate of $4.1590 general fund. And $275,622 for the fire bond levy.
662,
662, what is it?
622.
662. And that we approve the budget recommendation for fiscal year 2012 through 13 to be forwarded to the city commission.
Correct. There's a motion and a second.
Second.
Any,
Second.
another second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor indicate by raising your hands. Any opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you, lady.
Can I say something before?
Yes.
This is about a crazy budget meeting, but it's obvious that over the years, you guys, we've established some credibility with you guys and you trust us. It is a good budget. And thank you for trusting us. And I'm gonna miss a lot of things about this job. And
Yes, you are.
But not by
This is-
what, not by.
I have some really high experiences during the year, and of course, about getting the budget approved is one of them. And
Yeah.
this is my last big piece before I get out of here. But I got a lot of smaller pieces related to this. But anyway, I sure appreciate all the opportunities I've had here, and I love the idea of living in this town for all these years, all the exciting people we have here, and the exciting things that are happening. I'll be seeing a lot of you guys everywhere, I'm sure.
I'm sure. We'll be
Thank you for all making my job a lot easier.
I'll take a moment if I might.
David, there's an opening for an assistant.
You can apply for the budget
As long as I
committee.
don't have to come to work. Just deposit my check. I'll be on.
If I might, I guess as a commission member, I've been involved in more of these meetings with you than others for a longer period of time, probably about your 4th or 5th year is when I came on. And he was giving the dire warnings every year I was there, and really, those things didn't turn around, in my opinion, until Larry Patterson came on as city manager. And some very tough decisions were made at that particular time. We closed the Hilltop Urban Renewal District. Those are the 2 years I was off. Maybe that's why you made the progress thing. And you also, we had some layoffs there, and that resulted in us being in a healthier position. But you were giving those warnings for a long period of time. I don't know if they were falling on deaf ears, but nothing was happening. And I appreciate all that you've done and the warnings you were given, and when the time was appropriate, we could turn it around. We were also very fortunate on the annexation vote and the library district vote, which preceded our recession, fortunately, because those both, I think, passed by 2/3 or more in both of those cases, and put us in a very healthy position, particularly the fire annexation vote. And I think it was your skill set, and I think it was also that we were very lucky certain things fell into place exactly when they did.
Yeah, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Being in this situation.
Yeah. So thank you very much, David.
Thank you for your
Yes,
service.
thank you, David.
With that, I believe we're adjourned.
One comment.
Whoop, not so fast.
Just a reminder, you got your packet for the Urban Renewal Budget Committee, which you finished tonight, so you have 2 nights off, but next Tuesday night, the 24th, I just want to make sure for those that are here, that you have your packet there in front of you, the hard copy. Yeah, so just want to make sure that you noted that, and that's all I have.
24th, where and when?
Right here, April 24, 5:30, right here. More pizza.